Okay. Okay, welcome to all of our Torah Anytime viewers. Welcome all. I'm deeply grateful to Natan for having me here once again. It's a great privilege to come and address the Kollel here in Or Natan. And every time I come, I see the energy over here is always growing, and you're always going mile and mile, going higher and higher. And my only blessing to you is that you should continue to grow and continue to learn and continue to strive for greater and greater levels. I feel like I'm on NBC right now, CNN, Fox News. I have all these cameras on me. It's a little intimidating, but I think I'll be fine. So the weather today is going to be too... Okay. I think the topic that I prepared for today is very negeya to the guys here. Being that we committed our lives to learn Torah and to develop our character to come closer to Hashem, there's no greater topic than to understand what we are accomplishing in this room. Every single one of you who are coming in here on a daily basis, who has a kibbutz beitim, who has come to devote their time to learn Torah, it's only going to help us more if we just understood the power of the Torah. There is a pasuk that I would like to quote to you in Sefer Shemot, Parashat Beshalach, that I think brings out what the study of Torah is really all about. We learn, the pasuk tells us, "Va'etz Moshe et yado al hayam, va'ashav chayam lefnot boker le'etano u'mitzrayim." The Jews were waiting for the climax, 210 years of suffering, of being subjugated to the Egyptians, and finally has come the moment. We are prepared to be redeemed. Hashem is bringing our salvation. We are coming to the Yam, and we don't know what's going to hit us next. And there are many versions or many explanations to what really contributed to our salvation. And they say that, well, the Yam saw the Atmot Yosef, the bones of Yosef, and at that moment it was inspired that it must split as well. And the Darshanim come along and they tell us, Vayanos, that it split, and we see this Lashon again by Yosef when he split apart from his evil inclination, when he had the temptation to go and commit this Avirah with Eshet Potiphar, and as a result of him splitting, the Yam said, surely I shall split as well. The moment it saw the Atzmot of Yosef, it saw the bones of Yosef. Others say it was because of Nachshon ben Aminadav, that he went into the Sea of Reeds, he displayed his courage, that he was willing to risk his life. And he said that if Hashem promised us that we are going to get the Torah, we are going to get the Torah one way or the other. There was once a joke of a king who gathered all of his men, and he tells them, I have a proposition for you. Whoever is willing to dare to swim across my pool of water is going to get one of three options. So everyone's wondering, what's the big deal to swim across this pool of water, and what are the options? So he says, what I will do is, whoever swims across this pool of water, I'm going to offer them, either they could have any vacation of their choice, you could go wherever you want, you tell me, I'll send you there. The second option is, I will pay you handsomely, I'll take from the treasury of the king, and I will reward the one who will swim across this pool of water. Or the other option, the third option is that whoever will succeed in swimming across this pool of water is going to get the princess's hand in marriage. So everyone's wondering, so what's the big deal of swimming across this pool of water? And all of a sudden the king announces that this water is filled with all types of reptiles and all types of dangerous creatures, sharks and eels, and everyone starts to back out. And suddenly everyone hears a splash in the water. And they turn their attention towards the pool, and they see a man swerving his way without batting an eyelash. They witness how he manages to make it through all these big and small creatures, all different types of shapes and all different types of sizes, all different types of colors. And he somehow maneuvers his way through all of them and jumps out from the other side of the pool. And everyone's just shocked, and they're standing with their jaws dropped to the ground. And finally he walks, he's all soaked over there, he's wet. And the king approaches him and says, as a matter of my word, I must reward you. You probably did it because, you need a vacation. I understand, it's hard. Life gets hard. You need to go on vacation once in a while. Tell me where you want to go. Spain, France, Mexico. Tell me, I'll send you there. He says, no, that's not what I want. He says, oh, you're smarter. You want the money of the king, the treasury of the king. You're going to have all the money. You can go on as many vacations as you want. Very clever. No problem. We'll set it up. I'll send you, what's your bank account? I'll go ahead and send you, I'll wire you the money. He says, no, that's not what I want either. He says, you're even more smarter than that. You want to marry my daughter. This way you'll be rubbing shoulders with the king. You'll be the son-in-law of the king. And you're going to have all the vacations you want, all the money you want. He says, no, that's not what I want either. He says, so then what do you want? Can I offer you a can of Coke or something? Or what do you want? He says, I want to know the name of the man who pushed me in the pool in the first place. So Hashem says, who will be daring and willing to go into the Yam? And Nachshon ben Aminadav has displayed his courage. He went in. But I want to share with you the real contributing factor. So what really caused the sea to split? And it's hidden and laden within this pasuk. V'etz Moshe et yado al yam, and Moshe stretches his hand over the Yam. And all of a sudden the pasuk says, "V'yashat hayam l'tdot boker le'etzano." And all of a sudden the Yam, this is after the Yam is already prepared to close, and the Yam went back to its original state, back to its power. That's the way it's translated. But our Chachamim tell us there's something much more deeper going on over here. Our Chachamim say, don't learn it le'etzano, that it went back to its strength, to its original form. Rather, learn it le'etzano harishon, that it seems to be that there was some sort of tanai, there was some sort of condition. It sounds like God made a contract with the Yam Suf, that within the year 2448, that the sea must split. And the Midrash elaborates that this was in the month of Nisan, and the Jews were heading towards the Yam. And as they went to the Yam, the Moshe Rabbeinu gets up there and he tells the sea, you must split. Hashem commands Moshe to stretch out his hand, and the sea must split. But the sea did not want to listen. He says, why should I split? You split. Why do I have to listen to you? The Midrash says and elaborates that it went so far that the Yam said, who are you to tell me what to do? I am older than you. I was created on the third day of creation, and you were created on the sixth day of creation. So who must listen to who? If anything, I have to command you what to do. And you're coming to tell me that I have to split? In fact, Hashem has already told me from the beginning of creation that I must separate myself from the land. And now you're telling me that I should turn myself into land and I should allow you to cross. So Moshe didn't know what to do. He had a whole dialogue. He doesn't know how to convince the Yam. And by the way, when we're saying convince the Yam, obviously he's not talking to the water. If you see a guy standing above a bridge talking to the water, he must have, he must plan to jump in, but you got to say that guy, he's committing suicide or something. But we're talking about a situation where clearly he's talking to the malach of the Yam. He's talking to the angel. So he's telling the angel, split the sea for me. And the angel says, I was commanded by Hashem, and I was created on the third day, the Yam was created on the third day, and therefore there's no reason I have to listen to you. So Hashem calls out to Moshe turns to Hashem and he says, Hashem, what should I do? The Yam is not listening. And Hashem says, don't worry, I'll take care of this. It says that Hashem, the Midrash says, takes his hand, places it over Moshe's hand, and only once did the Yam see the hand of Hashem, did the Yam split. Phenomenal Midrash. Now, this, like I said, it was in April. So when the Yam saw Hashem comes down, he says, April Fools, I was just joking, we'll split now, don't worry about it, it was just a joke. And it splits for the Jews to cross. Hashem made a stipulation. He made a stipulated with the Yam from the beginning of creation. He made some sort of condition. So my question here is, what was this condition that Hashem made with the Yam? Furthermore, even if we want to take this pasuk literally and understand that what it means is that it went back to its original formation. That's what it originally means. The pasuk is telling us that when Moshe got to the other side, this was closer to the daytime, and the Yam was prepared to already close, so the pasuk has to tell us, and now it was closer to the daytime, and Moshe stretches out his hand, and the water closes, and it goes back to one body of water. Why do we have to know that? Are we concerned that it stayed open till today? Why does the pasuk have to go out of its way? We know the Torah is very careful with every bit of ink. It does not tell us anything unnecessary. So I'd like to explain this based on the Gemara Daf Zayin in Chulin. It tells us a story about the greater of Pinchas ben Yair. This is the author of the Mishnah that speaks about if a person will work on his midot is going to lead him to Torah. You'll be able to learn the Torah. And if you will be able to learn the Torah is going to lead you to Zihirut. And Zihirut is going to lead you to Zirizut. And Zirizut is going to lead you to Tihiyat HaMetim. You'll be able to resurrect the dead. These are the words in the Mishnah of Rabbi Yair ben Pinchas. In fact, Pinchas ben Yair. These are the words of Pinchas ben Yair. In fact, the Mislai Sharim, the author of the Mislai Sharim, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, he took it upon himself to write the Mislai Sharim, and he based it on the book of the Mishnah of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. His goal was to show you that these levels that he's talking about are attainable, and he committed his life to writing the Mitzvot Sharim, so we could understand that it's possible. And he starts off, you have to work on your humility, and once you work on your humility, then you'll be able to reach the next level, and you'll be able to go through the other midot, and finally it tells you you'll get to Zihirut, Zirizut, and so on and so forth. It's Siyat Metim. So he promises that whoever will finish the Mitzvot Sharim, his book, and he will learn it well, he will reach such levels where he will be able to resurrect the dead. By the way, I finished the book a few times, so anybody who needs any services, please let me know. Obviously, that's not what it means. It means that somebody lives by the book. He applies the book to his life, and he actually goes by the words of the Mitzvot Sharim. So, this the Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, the Gemara says, was once traveling, and he came to a river called Ginai. And the purpose of his trip was that he was planning to redeem a bunch of Jews who were imprisoned in a jail, and he took with himself a good sum of money. In fact, he says that he collected this money from the towns, people that he knew. He went around collecting tzedakah, and now he gathered enough money to do the mitzvah pidyon shev'im, to go and release the captives. There was one problem. He couldn't get to this other side of the river. So the Gemara says that he got to the river, and he says, "River," he says to the Yabok, "I want you to split." And again, here we go again. The river says, "Who do you think you are? Why should I split for you?" Says the Gemara, the Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair did not have too much patience, and he says, "If you don't split, I will make sure that you will dry up and you will cease to exist." When the river heard this, he got scared, and automatically he split. And Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was able to cross and get to the other side, and then the river goes back to its original form. And then as Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was continuing to walk, suddenly he turns around and sees a man carrying wheat, a Jew. He says, "Split for him also." And the river again splits. The man passes through, the river closes, and once again, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair sees another man. This time it was an Arab, and he says, "Split for the Arab also." He says, "But he's not even Jewish. Doesn't matter. Split for him also." And it split again. 3 times it split because it feared Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. I would like to reveal to you a Kiddush over here. We have Moshe Rabbeinu. We have Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair. I put it on a scale. Who's greater? Who would you say is greater, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, or was it Moshe Rabbeinu? Moshe Rabbeinu is the greatest Navi'im, the greatest prophet that has ever lived. Moshe Rabbeinu was the intermediary between us and Borei Olam, between us and Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu went to Shamayim for 40 days and 40 nights. He was half human, half malach, half an angel. Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the Torah for us. Moshe Rabbeinu was half his body was angelic. And yet, as great as he was, Anam Mikol Adam, the most humblest of all people, the levels that he has attained, we dream to even think about attaining. And yet, when you put him on the scale, for some reason, although Moshe Rabbeinu is much greater than Pinchas ben Yair, the water was more scared of Pinchas ben Yair than it was of Moshe Rabbeinu. And the question is, why? How is that possible? If you will try to measure the greatness, I would say that Pinchas ben Yair doesn't even reach the toenails of Moshe Rabbeinu. As the generations go down, we get lower and lower. That was many years later after Moshe Rabbeinu. So why is it that the water, the Yam, split right away for Pinchas ben Yair? And why didn't it split for Moshe Rabbeinu? Says the Orach Chaim HaKadosh that the explanation is that when Moshe Rabbeinu came to the Yam and he told the Yam to split, was this before the giving of the Torah or after the giving of the Torah? Before. It was before. But Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair came after the giving of the Torah. So Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair came with his credentials. He says, "I have the Torah, and you have to split for me because I have the power of Torah with me." Moshe Rabbeinu, although there was a Torah, but it wasn't given to us yet. It wasn't accessible to us yet. We didn't have it. But Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair has ownership towards it. He says, "I come with the power of Torah. And so you have to listen to me." Do you hear what's going on over here? That God stipulated with all of His creation that they have to subjugate themselves to all of mankind. Those who are learning Torah have power to manipulate nature. They give them a supremacy over the forces of nature. And that should give us an idea, and again, a concept, to understand the power of Torah. That Moshe Rabbeinu, with all his greatness, is not compared to the greatness of Rabbi Pinchas, because Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, because Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair has the power of Torah with him. He comes after the giving of the Torah. So we go back to our pasuk. It says, when it returned back to its original state, how do you understand that? The Chazal come along and says, don't learn that it came back to its original state. That's extra information. Rather learn it that what it means is that it went back because of its original condition. There was a condition that God made with the yam. What was this condition? Hashem said to the yam, I'm creating you so you could serve the Torah scholar. Your whole purpose, your whole reason for your creation is just to serve the Torah scholar. So that's why Pinchas ben Yair, he wasn't talking out of ga'ava, because he was conceited with himself. I'm going to destroy you. I will make sure that you will be erased from the face of the earth. It's not that he was telling the yam that you will no longer cease to exist because I'm the powerful one. He was saying it's very simple. Then if you're not going to serve me, so what's the purpose of your creation? The whole reason you were created was to serve me, the Torah scholar. So go ahead and split. That was the answer that he was giving to him. And when the yam heard this, he said, you are right. I have nothing to say back. He split, and he split 3 times for him. But when it comes to Moshe Rabbeinu, he did not have the Torah yet. Hashem himself had to come down, and he had to take Moshe's hand. And only then did it split. And if you want to learn according to a simple pashat, that it means that it just went back to its formation. What the Torah is coming to teach you is that the only reason it even had a right to go back to its formation is because it split the sea for Moshe Rabbeinu because God told it so. So the rabbis say, what does this mean that Hashem had to bring his hand down and he had to grab Moshe's hand? Does Hashem have a hand? We say lo guf lo demuta guf. Hashem doesn't have any figure, he doesn't have a form. So what does this mean that Hashem's hand came down? Listen to something brilliant. Our rabbis teach us, because a hand has how many fingers? 5. How many books do we have in the Torah? Bereshit, Shemot, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Devarim, 5 books. When Hashem brings down his hand, what it means is he's bringing down the Torah, and he reminds the yam, you have to split. Because whenever the yam is programmed, that whenever it sees anything that has to do with Torah, it says, of course, I have to obey. And he obeys the will of Moshe Rabbeinu as soon as he sees the hand of Hashem. This is the brilliant explanation behind what's going on behind this Midrash. The Midrash is teaching us that when you have Torah, you have a power, and you have a certain strength that lies within you. And so I want you to realize this because we're learning Torah here every single day. We're pounding on the Gemarot, we're going back and forth. We're learning B'iyun. As you are learning without you realizing, you are gaining levels of strength that you're able to come to a point in Hashem's eyes, in Hashem's world, we're able to even manipulate nature. I want to give you another example of this. The Yaakov Shmoni brings down when Yeshua ben Nun came to conquer the land of Eretz Yisrael. Eventually, they had to go to war, and Shabbat was coming in, and there's certain conditions when you're allowed to go to war on Shabbat to expand your borders, so on and so forth. Here, they were just protecting, I think, they believe the Yevonim, and he told them that we're going to fight for you. And now the sun was coming closer, and it was starting to set. And Yeshua said, if the sun is going to set, we're not going to be able to continue to fight. So he tells the sun, you must cease from singing praise to Hashem. You have to cease from your tracks. The son says, why should I listen to you? Again, I was created on the 4th day of creation. You were created on the 6th day of creation. I'm older than you. Why should I listen to you? What does Yeshua answer the son? He says, don't forget, you are here to serve the Torah scholar. Remember in Yosef's dream, you bowed to Yosef. You are here to serve us. Abraham Avinu says he was koneh the world. And therefore, and then comes along Yeshua and he says, you serve Hashem without free will. You just serve Hashem because you have to. But we have a free will. We serve it anyways, not because we have to, because we choose to. We have a free will, and yet we still do the right thing. And so with that, the sea goes ahead, the sun goes ahead, and it obeys the will of Yeshua. But again, the Torah gives us countless sources where we see that when you follow God's order, when you go in the ways and the path of Hashem, when you learn the Torah, you are able to reach such levels where even Rav Chaim Moshe Luzzatto said you'll be able to resurrect the dead. And you'll be able to do things that are beyond nature. Why? Because you went against your nature for Hashem, and that's the purpose of Torah. It forms us and it molds us to become the people that we came to this world to become. To work against our character, and Hashem says, because you went against your nature, now I'll give you the power to go against my nature. Talmud Torah keneged kulam. The Torah is compared to all the mitzvot. If I will put on the scale 612 mitzvot, one word of Torah, forget one word, one letter of Torah, that one letter is going to outweigh it all. And the Gemara says the Torah scholars have the power to direct God and have an influence. When Moshe came up to Shammai to get the Torah, the Malachim were very nervous. They said, who is this earthling? How could he come and take away our Torah from us? The Torah belongs to us. We have the rights towards the Torah. And they became a whole ruckus. They were prepared to destroy Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe turns to Hashem and he says, what should I do? And Hashem turns to Moshe and he says, don't worry, hold on to my kisei kavod. There's a whole back and forth over there. I would have just solved the problem. What's the dilemma over here? It's very simple. All Moshe has to do is say, listen guys, you know what, why don't we compromise? Take out a big Canon machine, we'll make a few copies, I'll get the Torah, I'll make a personalized copy for myself, and I'm good to go. Why are the Malachim so scared to give away the Torah? Because they understood that once Moshe Rabbeinu takes the Torah with him, he's now able to dominate over the world, to the next world. Now he is able to have a control over the Malachim. Now you have the key. You're infused with great abilities, where you can even command nature what to do, even the angels. So they said, once we give over the Torah, we're not just giving over the Torah, we're giving away ourselves to him. Now we have to obey him. Now he has the greatest power. It's too strong, this power. We can't just give it away. And that's why they were so scared to give it away to Moshe Rabbeinu. And the only way they were convinced is because Hashem says to the Malachim, Bereshit bara Elokim. Rashi says, what is Reshit? The Jewish people. It's because of the Jewish people. And Yom HaShishi, that Hashem created the Adam. Yom HaShishi is also referred to the 6th of Sivan. Because of the 6th of Sivan, because I'm giving the Jews the Torah, that's the whole reason why I even created the world. So you have no choice but to give it to the people. Shlomo HaMelech was able to control animals with his wisdom. He was able to communicate with angels. He was able to communicate with demons. Rav Chaim Volozhin, he comments on a pasuk on Shlomo HaMelech, where it says, Sus v'rechuvo, that the horses of Paro, when they were coming to chase and pursue the Jewish people, as they were coming, comes along Shlomo HaMelech, and he says that Hashem looked at that moment like our relationship with him. He said that in this case, the horse is like you and I'm like the rider. Okay, this doesn't sound like a compliment, it doesn't sound too romantic. If I were to want to be romantic, maybe I would use a different example. But here Hashem comes along and he says, my relationship with you is like the horse and the rider. Just like the horse and the rider, the horses were being guided and they were going towards the Yam. So I look at it like that's my relationship with you. What's the connection? So says Rav Chaim Volozhin. What is the connection? What we are saying over here is, he explains to Shlomo HaMelech that in this case, usually it is the rider that takes control over the horse. But in this case, it was the horse that took over and guided the rider. The rider had no choice. And so Hashem says, I'm like that rider and you're like the horse. You would think that I'm the one who's in control. Hashem says, no, I gave you the key to control nature. I'm giving you the control. And that's why he compares us to the horses of Paro. The Tzemach Zedek was the first Lubavitcher Rebbe. He wrote 80,000 Barot. And they say that he was so wise, that he would write so fast, that the ink didn't even have time to dry. By the time he flipped to the next page, it already got all smudges. And he wrote 80,000 of Barot. And one time he had a student by the name of Rav Yosef Lipman, who came to him and he said to the Tzemach Tzedek, he says, I have a problem, I went to the doctors. The doctors are giving up hope on me. There's a certain organ in my body that's failing me. He said that this organ, if it fails me, then I won't be able to live. It's a vital organ. Rabbi, what should I do? The Tzemach Tzedek told him, you have to move to Israel. If you move to Israel, you will see that you will live a very long life. And that's exactly what Rav Yosef Lipman did. He traveled to Israel, he settled there, he got married there, he had kids, and he lived a very long life. And he was worthy and zocher to even see his grandchildren. So they asked the Tzemach Tzedek, how did you know? Is there something about Israel that allows a person to live longer? Is it the air of Israel that you will breathe and you inhale and all of a sudden it was able to cure him? He said it's very simple. If you look into the Bet Yosef, he talks about a certain disease, a certain blemish, a certain ailment inside an animal. He says if this organ that humans have also, which was also the organ that this man was suffering from, that if this organ is blemished, then this animal is no longer kosher, it is treif, according to the Ramah. But according to, says Rav Yosef Karo, but according to me, I hold that it is still fine and it's not treif and you're allowed to still eat it. So he explained like this, he says, we over here in Europe, we hold like the Ramah. And because the Ramah says that this organ, once it's punctured, once it is blemished, it is no longer kosher, so that must be that over here he's not going to survive because the Rabbi said it's not kosher. He's not going to make it. But over there in Israel, under the jurisdiction of Rav Yosef Karo, under the jurisdiction of Bet Yosef, it is going to make it because he says it is okay and it is kosher. The Rabbi said, and so it happened. It depends which Rabbi you follow, it depends where you go. And because this is the influence of the Rabbi that shows us the power of what the Rabbi said. Well, what gave him this power? It was the study of the Torah. The Gemara in Sanhedrin. Actually, I'll tell you a story with the Rambam. He writes, he brings down in Purish Mishnayot. He says there was once a humongous palace in the middle of the forest, in the middle of nowhere. And there was a tzaddik who was walking with his son. And as they were walking by, he turns to the palace and says, I want to let you know that once upon a time, this palace was built by thousands of workers. There were thousands of employees that got together to create this magnificent looking palace. And the whole purpose of this palace was to serve us and give us some shade so we could continue learning as we walk. So it would be not too crucial, it won't be too difficult for us to learn. That the purpose of this palace, and everybody who lived in this palace, and all the workers that put this palace together, was just to serve who? A son and a father learning together as they're walking by, so they could get some shade, so they could learn even better. That should give us again an idea of what power of Torah is. The Gemara in Sanhedrin, Daf Kuf Dalet, says there's a big machloket amongst the Sanhedrin after Shlomo Melech passed away, whether he was worthy or not to get the next world, to walk into his portion of Olam Haba. Because what happened is when Shlomo Melech came up, they said you were a great tzaddik, you were the wisest of all men, but you have a stain on your soul. What happened? Shlomo Melech said, what did I do wrong? He says, come on, you know what you did wrong. 1,000 wives, 700 concubines, 300 wives. This is not good for a king. So Shlomo Melech said, please let me in. I did it for good reasons. I wanted to bring Mashiach. I was trying to bring the world to its ultimate perfection. And David HaMelech, when he heard the ruckus, he came down to this world. David HaMelech said, I'm going to have to stand up for my son, King Solomon. And I have to do whatever I can to protect my son. And he comes to the Sanhedrin of this world. And he tells them, please pray and daven and learn from my son to get his portion of the next world. And the Sanhedrin was sitting, as soon as they saw David HaMelech come down to this world, all the way down to this world, thousands of light years, just to tell them that they must allow Shlomo Melech and Shamayim to let them into this portion of the world to come. He said, he is allowed to go. He had good intentions. The moment the rabbis opened up their mouth over here, the Beit Din upstairs agreed. But the question here is, why did he come to the Beit Din over here? He should have come to the Beit Din upstairs. He came to the wrong Beit Din. What are you doing over here? They're deciding the court over there. Imagine there's a court over here. They're deciding the case, and I went to a different court to tell them that they should. What's going on over here? You came to the wrong court. Listen to a phenomenal explanation. This is the question of the Yavetz, and the Yavetz says, David HaMelech was smart. He says, no, it's not them who decide. It's us who decide. We have the Torah. And like I said earlier, the angels were scared for the same reason. They said that once they have the Torah, they could dominate over the next world. And because the rabbi said it's okay, so the next world, it must be okay. And with this, when David HaMelech came back upstairs, he already saw that his son already had a portion of the world to come. The Gemara in Baba Kama, Daf Nun, tells us, there was a great man, his name was Rabbi Chunya, a great rabbi, a great scholar. And his kindness to the Jewish people was that he will always dig up wells. What was the purpose of digging up wells? The purpose of him digging up these wells was so that when people would travel to Eretz Yisrael during the Shalosh Regalim, during the pilgrimage, he would make sure that nobody will chas v'shalom get dehydrated. Nobody should get thirsty. He didn't want to inconvenience anybody. So he made sure to make these wells on the way, on the path to Eretz Yisrael. And one time, says the Gemara, Nechunya's daughter fell into one of these wells. And he didn't know what to do. Now this part of the story fascinates me more than the end of the story. What happened is, instead of running to Hatzalah and calling a paramedic, who did they run to? They run to the great rabbi, the great sage Rabbi Hanania ben Doza. He came to the rabbi. They're supposed to go get a paramedic. They're supposed to get people to go try to get her out of the well. But they understood the rabbi's Torah was so great. So they ran to Rabbi Hanania ben Doza and they said, please daven or pray to Hashem that Hashem should allow it, that she should be safe and sound, that she should be able to come out of the well, and there should be no illnesses. She shouldn't come out there chas v'shalom sick. She should be 100% healthy. And he says, don't worry, everything's going to be okay. An hour later, they said, what should we do? We have to do something. We have to get her out of there. Don't worry, she'll be fine. But at the third hour, he was still in his books. He was learning his Torah. He looks up and he says, don't worry, you can go back and you'll see that she is safe and everything is okay with her. They ran back. They found out that she was pulled out of the well. It turned out that the Avraham Avinu came and he pulled her out with his sheep, and eventually she came out and she was okay and she was talking and she was more alive than ever. So they asked, when was it? What time was it when she was pulled out? They calculated it and they realized it was the same exact moment when the rabbi said she will be okay and now you could go back. The moment he said those words, as he said, happened. And the second that he pronounced and he announced that she's going to be okay, just that second she was able to come out and she was alive, and everyone saw for themselves that she was okay. So you see again, Reb Acha says there's just one problem with the story. The PS of the story is that eventually Nechunya's son passes away, and what does he pass away from? Dehydration. But we just said that we just quoted that Rav Hanania ben Doza came along and told us that it can't be. It's not possible that she should die. And what was his reasoning? Because this is a man who has invested his life into helping people. And the same mitzvah that he's helping people with, that's the same mitzvah that's going to bite him, that's the same mitzvah that's going to hurt him. It just doesn't make sense. So once he said those words, it doesn't make sense. So Hashem says, it doesn't make sense to you, it doesn't make sense to me. So he made sure that his daughter will be okay. The daughter of Chanunya. But the question here is, and why did his son pass away? And the explanation is, because at that point, Rav Hanania ben Doza was already out of this world. And as long as the rabbi is here, God rules according to the rabbi. But the rabbi was no longer here. So once the rabbi is no longer here, his words are not as strong. And so Hashem was able to take away the life of his son. And the truth is, we learned that actually his daughter's time was here. It was time to go. But because of the rabbi's words, he still was able to save her. There was a similar story where Moshe Feinstein, that there was a boy who was wearing a yarmulke, he was crossing the street, he got hit by a car. So they ran to Moshe Feinstein. I believe the way the story goes is they told him, Rabbi, there was a boy, he was crossing the street, please, you have to daven for him, learn his merit. He says, don't worry, he can't be his Jewish. What do you mean he was wearing a yarmulke? He can't be his Jewish. But Rabbi, we saw him wearing a yarmulke. I said he can't be his Jewish, went back to learning. They went downstairs, they found out what happened. Turns out it was a goyish kid. I believe what happened is he stole another boy's yarmulke, he wanted to make trouble, and he was rolling across the street, he put it on his head, and it looked like he flew off of his head, and he fell down to the ground. And he ran to the rabbi and he said, Rabbi Feinstein, you're a prophet. How did you know he was not? How did you know that he wasn't even Jewish? He said, I'm not a prophet. I'm not a son of a prophet. But you know how I knew? Because it can't be. While I'm sitting here learning Torah, that somebody out there got hurt. While I'm sitting learning Torah, all of the Lower East Side is protected. Everybody is benefiting from my Torah. That was his attitude towards his learning. He said, it can't be that somebody out there got hurt while I'm sitting here learning in my home. There was a story about Rabbi Ben Shalah. The Gemara says that he used to learn with Eliyahu Hanavi occasionally. In fact, they actually learned with him on a daily basis. And they say that anybody who will see Eliyahu Hanavi, even one time in their life, will earn a portion in the world to come. They're guaranteed, no question about it. And this man, Rabbi Ben Shalah, the great sage, will learn with Eliyahu Hanavi on a daily basis. And guess who Eliyahu Hanavi, the Midrash says, will learn with on a daily basis every single morning with a cup of tea? The Midrash says with Hashem himself. He will walk in the garden of heaven and he will walk and talking with Hashem. And then he will, after this chavruta, he will come down, he will learn with Rabbi Ben Shalah. So as he will learn with him, one time Rabbi Ben Shalah asked him, can I ask you something? What is Hashem doing right now? You were just with him. Can you tell me what he's doing now? At this moment, what is he occupying his time with? So says Eliyahu Hanavi, I don't know, let me go check. He takes his horses, buggies, whatever it is, his chariot, he flies to heaven, goes, sees what's going on in heaven, what Hashem is up to, comes downstairs, says, I know what Hashem is doing. He's learning the Torah, the Tanaim, the Amoraim, the Rishonim, the Achronim. He's learning the Torah from beginning to end, the Nevi'im, Ketuvim, every single part of the Torah, every aspect of the Torah, except for one part of Torah. One part of Torah he doesn't learn. And what part is that? Rabbi Meir's Torah he does not learn. So Rabbi Ben Shalah said, but Rabbi Meir was a great sage. Rabbi Meir, don't get me even started Rabbi Meir is. How could you tell me that he's not learning Rabbi Meir's Torah? Everyone else's Torah he's learning, Rabbi Akiva's Torah he's learning, Rabbi Yosef's Torah he's learning, Rabbi Gamliel's Torah he's learning, but Rabbi Meir's Torah he's not learning? How could it be? And the Rabbi Eliyahu said, I don't know, I guess it's because Rabbi Meir's teacher was Acher, Elisha ben Avuya, the one who went off to Derech, and because, and we know the story, as Elisha ben Avuya was sitting on his horse, and he was riding it on Shabbat, being Michalel Shabbat, Rabbi Meir, his student, continued to learn from him. And he was learning from a bad source, and because it originates from a bad place, Hashem says, I cannot learn such a Torah. So Rabbi Acher says, I can't be. So Eliyahu says, let me go check what Hashem is doing now. He goes back upstairs, comes back and he says, okay, what is Hashem doing now? He says, now he's learning the Rabbi Meir's Torah. What? Now he's learning Rabbi Meir's Torah? Why? I thought you said it's not okay. I thought he said that his rabbi was corrupt, and therefore it was wrong. He says, yeah, but yeah, you said it's okay to learn Rabbi Meir's Torah. Because Rabbi Meir knew how to take the good from the bad. He didn't take anything bad from his Rebbe, so it was fine. And because you said, Hashem said. Now let me ask you something. Does Hashem need his permission to learn Rabbi Meir's Torah? Absolutely not. But that just shows you the humility of Hashem. That Hashem just wants to show us that even I give you power towards my decisions, based on what your decisions are. The great sage Rabbi Ben Shalah understood that when we learn Torah, we are able to even control God's decision. We are able to control even God's right decision. Now you see, Hananiah ben Doza was once was walking, and a witch was, the Gemara says, was standing on the side, and she saw she was trying to play with the dust of the earth, trying to somehow cast a spell on him, and he started to laugh, and he said, how are you going to cast a spell on me, the Gemara says, if I have the power of Torah? That even witchcraft and sorcery, nothing in this world can touch me, no ayin hara, nothing bad could have an effect on me, because I learned Torah. It says that Hananiah once came to visit his daughter, and she didn't have what to light the Shabbat candles with. And she was upset. She said, I don't know how to do this mitzvah now. I have nothing to light. I have no oil. He says, what do you mean you have vinegar? So light the vinegar. He says, but how could that be? Vinegar is against nature. I can't put light on vinegar. He says, don't worry. I said it's okay, so it's okay. She went ahead and lit on the vinegar. Because the rabbi said Hashem agrees with him. You know, one time I was sitting in my car, I was driving, and I ran out of gas, and I'm thinking, if Hashem said that this world could, I'm a Torah scholar, I can learn Torah, then if this car could run on gas, it could also run on no gas. And then my car ran out of gas about a mile later. But I guess that you have to be on the level to be able to perform such tricks. You know, there was a story with one rabbi. He was learning Torah, and there was bombs flying in Israel. There was all types of rockets flying, and as the rockets were flying, suddenly the students run into the home of the rabbi, and they said, "Rabbi, there's rockets flying. It's dangerous. We have to go to a bomb shelter." He says, "No, don't worry. The Torah is going to protect me." He said, "Rabbi, I understand you learn Torah, and the Torah has protection, but we have to put our ishtatut also." He says, "I am putting my ishtatut. I'm learning Torah. The Torah is going to protect me." He says, "Listen, Rabbi, I think he doesn't understand what's going on. We have to get him out of here." They took the rabbi against his will. They forced him out of there. They picked him up and they brought him to a bomb shelter. Exactly about 10 seconds after they pulled him out of the house, a rocket came and blew up the rabbi's house. He said, "Rabbi, we saved your life." He said, "You saved my life? You blew up my house. If I was still there learning Torah, it would have still protected me and my house. You blew up my house. Who's going to pay for this now?" And he really believed it. Because when I learn Torah, I have a protection. When I learn my Gemara, I have a protection. In fact, you know what Gemara stands for? Gimel Mem Reish Ayin. Gemara stands for Gabriel, Gimel, Michael, Raphael, and Uriel. That's what Gemara stands for. You have protection from the Malachim who come down to this world, they protect you. There was a great story of Antoninos. Rabbeinu HaKodesh was this chabuta. When they were little kids, they were babies, and it says that they were under the dictatorship of anti-Semites, and basically what happened is that Rabbeinu HaKodesh, they performed a circumcision on him, a brit, and they found out, they wanted to get the mother in trouble, and they said that anybody who performs a brit is going to be executed. And somebody went and informed on Rabbeinu HaKodesh's family. They came to the king and the queen. They said that Rabbeinu HaKodesh, this boy, his parents have just performed a circumcision on him. So he said, "Bring him here. We've got to see for ourselves." They really did perform circumcision on his baby. So they went ahead. The mother was crying. She had to go bring her baby now to the king. And now there's no way to hide the baby. She's going to show him that he has a brit, and he's going to for sure wipe out the entire family. And as she was walking towards the palace crying, a lady was approaching, happened to be the queen, and her heart went out to her, and she says, "Don't worry, I'm going to give you my child instead. You don't have to worry about bringing your child to my husband. Instead, take my baby." It was Antoninos. Just take him, and you will bring him to the king. And that's when they switched the babies, and this baby doesn't have a brit. So when they gave it over to the king said, "What? He has no brit." The one who informed on them, he ended up executing them instead. And as this baby was by Rabbeinu HaKodesh's mother, Antoninos was drinking more milk, and he was inspired by this milk. And as a result, he grew up to love rabbis and he loved the Torah. But the other boy, it says Antoninos would drink kosher milk from his mother, and the other baby, they would try to give it to the nurses, but he would not drink from their milk because this milk was not Chal Yisrael, I guess. So, anyways, later on, we learned that they became best chavutos. And he built a tunnel from his palace all the way to Rabbeinu HaKodesh's home. So every single day he will travel to the tunnel and he will learn with the rabbi. One day, Antoninos came to learn with Rabbeinu HaKodesh, and as he came, he saw his sitting with somebody. He says, "How can it be? I told you it's supposed to be between me and you. Nobody's supposed to know about us learning together." The rabbi said, "Don't worry, he's an angel. He's not a human being. He's not going to go and tell on you. No one's going to find out that we're learning. I know it's supposed to be a secret, and they don't approve of you and me learning. Don't worry about it. But he's just an angel." He says, "Oh, if he's an angel, let us test it out." On the way here, every single time I travel through the tunnel, I always keep a guard on the lookout to make sure no one's coming. And on the way out, I always make sure to also kill them, to make sure that there should be no evidence. So it happens to be on the way here, I had a guard, and I killed the guard. Can you go and see how the guard is doing? So he was afraid that if he goes and checks up on the guard, and he comes back and says, "Oh, the guard is dead," so he says, "If an angel, he should be able to resurrect him." So he comes back and he says, "If I come back and tell him that the guard is dead, he's not going to approve, and then he's going to end up killing me." So he goes and he says, "Get up," to the guard, and the guard gets up. He was resurrected from the dead, and because he said those words, because he learning with Rabbeinu HaKodesh, because he had power of Torah, he was able to resurrect him. So again, this is another source for the Gemara, and I have plenty of sources that will show you that, and the Gemara always give you the same conclusion. It's all because of the study of Torah. Because you have the power of Torah, you'll be able to resurrect the dead. You'll be able to manipulate nature. You'll be able to go beyond Teva. Yerushalmi in Kitzabot talks about a girl who's a betulah, and she breaks the betulah before the age of 3. If she breaks the betulah before the age of 3, the Gemara says in Kitzabot that her betulah will grow and she will remain a betulah. However, if after the age of 3, even a day after the age of 3, it will not grow back. So there was a case where a girl was the age of 3, and her birthday was coming up in Nisan. So it was just Nisan the next day, the first day of Nisan, and she it was already considered that she was 3 years old. But the rabbis that year decided it's a leap year, and they decided to add another Adar, and because it was an Adar bet, it wasn't considered her birthday yet, and because they decided that it's only going to happen once she reaches 3 years old, she wasn't considered 3 years old yet, and as a result, the B'Tzulah came back. Why? Because they added another Adar. One Adar more, and that's it. If they didn't add that one Adar, it would have been considered her birthday, and the B'Tzulah would not have grown. So you see again, it says that Tu B'Shvat. You know that we have to always make sure that the solar calendar and the lunar calendar should always be compliant with each other. So every single because there's a 10-day difference every single year, every 3 years we have a leap year, we also make sure to add a second Adar. So always we have 2 Adars, so this way the calendar doesn't fall back. Because the Torah says that Pesach is the holiday of the spring, it must always land in the springtime. If you're not going to follow this schedule, eventually it's going to keep falling back, and Pesach is going to fall out in the winter, like the Ramadan does. It falls out different times of the year, sometimes in the summer, sometimes in the winter. So we don't want to fall into this problem. That's why every 3 years we have something called leap year. Tu B'Shvat, sometimes every 3 years it lands. It's supposed to really be Tu B'Shvat, but really the Adar replaces the Tu B'Shvat. It replaces Shvat. Because it replaces Shvat, so it's really not considered Adar really. So, which means that really it's Tevet when it's Shvat, and whenever it's Adar, it's considered Shvat, right? So if that's the case, so they asked the Chachamim. So then if it's not Tu B'Shvat yet, because it's really pushed back, and it's still winter outside, but according to the month, we call it Tu B'Shvat. We didn't add a second month yet. It's not Adar Bet yet. So then do we consider this Tu B'Shvat to be considered Tu B'Shvat, or is it considered Tevet? What is it considered? Like, how do we look at the calendar? And the rabbis say no. Once the rabbi said it's Tu B'Shvat, then it's Tu B'Shvat. Whether it's cold outside or not, it's still going to bud. And you see a miracle happen, and science can't explain it. How is it that every single year during the month of Tu B'Shvat, somehow, whether it's winter or not, it still buds on the 3rd year, even though it's cold outside? And again, the rabbis said, and that's why it happens. There was a boy who's 13 years old, and Gemara says if he eats a piece of meat that's not kosher, he brings a korban, he has to, or he gets lashes, if he's already 13 years old. But again, if his bar mitzvah falls out in Nisan, and it's Adar Bet, so he's not considered bar mitzvah yet, he doesn't get lashed. We might say that the story happened, so many years ago. I heard a story recently, Rabbi Moyali, he told a student that as long as I live, you will live as well. And it says that the day after he passed away, his student passed away as well. The powers of Rav Chachamim, the Shlomo Kruger was a rabbi known to fight the Reform movement. And it says that it used to be back then by the Reform, they used to bring a coffin on the wagons. And they would travel with the wagon, and they would bring the wagon, the coffin on the wagon, they would bring it to the gravesite. So Rav Shlomo Kruger was against it, he was opposed to this, and he says that anybody who does this will be cursed. And the government heard that this is what the Reform wants to do, they went along with it, and he said that whoever goes according to the government will see that they're going to see plagues, they're going to see problems, and whoever listens to me and doesn't follow the government, you'll only be blessed. And we see that everybody in that city, everybody who listened to Rav Shlomo Kruger, they were blessed. Women who couldn't get pregnant all of a sudden got pregnant, and those people who ended up not listening to him ended up with death decrees and all types of bad has entered their homes. So if you want to elevate yourself against nature, to be potentially God-like, learn Torah. We don't want to be under the influence of the world. We rather have the world under our influence. There was a news reporter that came to Rabbi Yosef, and she said to him that she's a widow, where she put on a whole show. She was crying. It's a famous story. And she said that I have a husband, I lost him. The truth was, she was just trying to cause trouble, and her goal was to make the rabbi look bad, and that he should give her a permission, a approval, that she's allowed to go ahead and get remarried, although her husband was really still alive, but she wanted to convince the rabbi, her husband passed away, and she wants to get an approval and she would get remarried. So once he gives her the approval, she'll go around claiming, look, my husband is still alive, and the rabbi told me I can get remarried. The rabbis make up their own things, they're making up their own stories, they don't know what they're doing. So Rabbi heard her out, his heart went out to her, and he gave her an approval to get remarried. She says, that's it. He gave me an approval, a contract. There was many widows who used to come to Chavadia and say, we don't know where my husband is. There's no proof that he's dead, but there's so many years, he's lost, he's gone. There was a terrorist attack, something happened, or there was war, and we don't know what happened to him, he's lost, but I want to continue, I'm a grusha, I want to continue, I want to move on, I want to get married. And Chavadia will give his approval. He'll give them a contract, he'll give them something that would say that he allows them to get remarried. And here this woman was clearly still married, and she wanted to trick the rabbi. Right? The moment she took the contract from the rabbi that allowed her to go and get married, it says that she was running home, she was calling her husband to tell her the good news. We got him, we're going to put it on the news, we're going to say to everybody, oh, we got the rabbi. She kept calling her husband, he didn't pick up. She walked into the house, she saw that her husband was dead. he passed away. And when did he die? The same moment the rabbi gave her the permission to get remarried. As soon as he said you can get remarried, as he said, it happened. She was allowed to get remarried because her husband was the truth, no longer alive. So we don't mess with the rabbis. That just gives us an idea of who our sages were. The Baba Sali was Birkat Levana, and he needed to make Birkat Levana, but it was too cloudy, and he couldn't see what's going on. So it says he took his staff and he just erased the clouds with it. He says, "You're only here to listen to me. You have to follow my order." He takes his stick, his staff, and he just erases the clouds with it. And he says Birkat Levana. And he says, "Okay, now you go back and cover the moon right after." Well, maybe there's another guy who also needs to say Birkat Levana. You give him a second. Okay, now you go back. This is the Baba Sali, so this is not too long ago. That shows us that we are able to attain these levels and even higher, and we have such potential. But again, the first step to reaching, the reason I'm telling you the stories is not because I think that maybe they are attainable, to us at least. Maybe we're not on that level. I don't know if we'll ever reach this level. But at least we should know the levels that are out there. Once we know there's such levels out there, we know what to strive for. Now we can go even higher. And then we can perform miracles. Did you know that the word miracle actually could also be understood mi, rak, el. Mi in Hebrew means who. Rak, el. Rak means only, and kel is Hashem. Who's the performer of all wonders and miracles? Who's the one who performs all the miracles, all the nisim? And the answer is Hashem. Mi, who? Rak, el. Only God. And this is in fact why some people think that, sometimes they think that, oh, maybe it was a coincidence. We have this urge to think that maybe things are just happenstance, it just happens to be. But that's why we say the word for coincidence is mikra, mem kuf resh hey. Mem kuf resh hey could also be scrambled to resh kuf mem hey. Rak me Hashem, only Hashem. Rak me Hashem means only from God. No doctor, no technology, nothing in this world could save me, only Hashem. He is the performer of all miracles. And if I place my trust in Him, then I know that He'll take care of me. Ain't old milvado. It's not kochim b'yetzim yadi. It's not that I did or I said or anybody